Hello and welcome to the Arirang special. A new dawn of peace emerged on the Korean Peninsula in 2018, starting with North participation in the Winter Games in Pyeongchang. For sure, efforts will be continued to be made, keep up the momentum into 2019. For the Arirang special, we sit down with Professor Jae-in, President Moon Jae-in's Special Advisor for Unification, Foreign Affairs, and the National Security to look back over the year 2018 and also share his prospects for 2019.
정상이 이렇게 먼 데까지 와서 하는 것도 그게 처음 있는 거예요. 근데 마이크가 없어요. 그러세요.
Professor Moon, thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So the possibility of peace on the Korean Peninsula seems to be closer than ever before in 2018. What would be your overall assessment on the state of affairs on the Korean Peninsula?
If you go back to year 2017, it was a year of crisis, chaos, and uncertainty. But year of 2018 was a year of peace, promise, and hope. And there was a great reversal in the development of inter-Korean relations and the steps towards denuclearization. And I would argue that the year 2018 was really a year of hope and promise.
Right. As you just mentioned, I feel like the tensions were at the highest at the end of 2017 with North continuous nuclear tests and missile launches. And all of a sudden, at the beginning of 2018, North changed its stance. Why?
But if you look at the New Year speech by Chairman Kim Jong-un, it is very quite clear that he wanted to pursue for negotiation and dialogue for the sake of, I think, the prosperity. I would say that the prosperity of North Korea must have been the most important rationale for the sudden change of posture by North Korea. And Chairman Kim Jong-un made it very clear that he wanted to have a dialogue with South Korea. He would send a special delegation to the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. And also North Korea is willing to have a dialogue and negotiation with the United States. The rationale behind such a kind of great reversal on the part of North Korea must have something to do with the economic resuscitation of North Korea. Therefore, in the past, North Korea has been pursuing Pyeongchang policy, meaning simultaneous pursuit of economic development and nuclearization. But North Korea should have realized that it is practically impossible to pursue those two goals simultaneously. Therefore, they want to put aside the nuclear issue, and they want to come back to the negotiation table for the sake of prosperity in North Korea. Therefore, I would say that the prosperity on the part of North Korea is a big issue. And another important factor was the mediating role of President Moon Jae-in, because President Moon, keenly sensed what North Korea wanted. Therefore, he immediately responded to the North Korean proposal to have a high-level talks. And also he played a very important role of the linking Pyongyang and Washington, and thereby resuming dialogue between the U.S. and North Korea. And also I would say that the President Trump's decision was very, very important. If you go back to President Bush and President Obama, when there were chances for dialogue and negotiated settlement, they blew away. However, President Trump seized the momentum and pushed for the summit talk with Chairman Kim Jong-un and turned around the overall situation on the Korean Peninsula. Therefore, I would say that the great reversal year 2018 was a product of a tripartite harmony involving Chairman Kim Jong-un, President Moon Jae-in, and President Trump.
Right. Speaking of dialogue, there were 3 inter-Korean summits this year. Could you tell us your assessment about those 3?
But it is really extraordinary that two leaders could have 3 summit talks in 1 year. Okay? And if you go back to 2000, we had the first Korean summit. That was the first and last for President Kim Dae-jung. And we had a second summit in year 2007. And President Nom-hyun really tried hard to have the summit with Chairman Kim Jong-il, but it took almost 4.5 years to have the summit. Only having the summit with Chairman Kim Jong-il in October 2007. But that was just 3 months before the end of the Nom-hyun government. But this time was very different because in the second year of President Moon Jae-in, he could have 3 rounds of summit with North Korea. I would say that that's a very profound development.
Right. You just mentioned the 2 previous summits in 2000 and 2007. Compared to those 2, what progress do you think we have witnessed this year?
I'm a very lucky person because I was able to attend the first summit in year 2000 and second Pyongyang summit in 2007. And also I attended the third Pyongyang summit in September 2018. Right. But I would say that the first summit was kind of ceremonial and kind of mood-making and exploratory summit. Therefore, the first summit adopted the June 15 joint declaration, and I would say that the June 15 declaration kind of defined overall parameters of inter-Korean relations. Okay, but second summit in 2007 was much more concrete and specifics, and also if you look at the October 4th joint summit declaration, is a quite lengthy declaration. Therefore, the second Pyongyang summit was able to produce October 4th joint summit declaration in such a way to give a specifics to the general agreement of year 2000 in a summit. Third summit in September 2018 in Pyongyang was much more specific in terms of implementation. Therefore, I would say that the first summit set the general tones and big pictures. And then second summit gave a much more specific plans for the June 15th joint declaration. Meanwhile, the Pyongyang declaration has given very specific implementation plans for the existing inter-Korean relations. Therefore, I would say that those three summits have shown some kinds of evolutionary pattern in inter-Korean relations.
Regarding Panmunjom Declaration in last April, could you explain more about the importance of the first inter-Korean summit between President Moon Jae-in and Chairman Kim Jong-un?
But, Panmunjom summit in April 2018 was held almost 11 years after the second summit. Right. There was a total incommunicado between Pyongyang and Seoul. Therefore, I would say that one of the greatest significances of the Panmunjom summit has something to do with the fact that the two leaders met, okay, for the first time, because North Korean leader is new leader, okay, even though he was in power for 7 years, okay, and also President Moon Jae-in was a new leader from South Korea. Therefore, meeting of two new leaders has a very significant meaning. But another important point is this: if you look back to year 2000 and 2007, they had a real hard time in setting agenda because North Korea always wanted the withdrawal of American forces from South Korea. South Korea wanted to avoid it. Meanwhile, paying more attention to the easier issues. But this time there was a complete agreement on the agenda setting. North Korea didn't raise the issue of withdrawal of American troops from South Korea, and we also accepted the political and military settlement, from the beginning. Therefore, there's a convergence of agenda setting between North and South, and that's a very significant one. Another very significant issue was what? It was the first time that the North Korea accepted South Korean proposal on the adoption of a nuclear issue. If you look at the Article 3 of the Panmunjom Declaration, there is a stipulation on the complete denuclearization. And I think that was a very, very remarkable development in inter-Korean relations.
Among the three summits held within this year, I feel like the last one in September, the Pyongyang Declaration, brought one of the biggest changes on the Korean Peninsula. Could you explain more about the Pyongyang Declaration, please?
It is very important for us to look at the nature of the Pyongyang Declaration. Article 1 of Pyongyang Declaration is about the implementation of Article 2 of the Panmunjom Declaration regarding military tension reduction. Okay, and I think that I would say that is the remarkable development because if you look at the Article 2 of the Panmunjom Declaration, both leaders agreed to reduce tension on the Korean Peninsula, to transform demilitarized zone into a peace zone, and change a northern limit line area into a maritime peace zone, And at the same time, both leaders agreed to suspend hostile activities under the ground, okay, on the sea, and in the air. Right. But Article 1 of Pyongyang Declaration, concretized those agreements with a specific, protocol. Therefore, it was, and that is all about so-called operational arms control or military confidence building measures. And I think that will be really significant development, okay? Because, and if, since November 1st this year, both sides have implemented that agreement. Now you don't see any hostile activities near the DMZ or in the West Sea or in the air. Therefore, I think that's a remarkable development. Another important aspect has something to do with Article 5 of the Pyongyang Declaration. It stipulates two elements. First element is North Korea has committed to dismantle Pyeongchang missile engine test site in the observation of concerned countries, namely the United States. Right. And another element was that should the United States comply with measures agreed in Singapore, okay, then North Korea is willing to permanently dismantle nuclear facilities in Yongbyon. And I think that's a very, very important one because North Korea is really willing to dismantle missiles and the nuclear facilities with kinds of American inspection. And I think that was a very bold concession on the part of North Korea. And I would say that out of those 5 agreements embodied in Pyongyang Declaration, Article 1 and Article 5 have far-reaching implications for denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and the peacemaking in Korea.
I see. Since Pyongyang summit, I believe many have been waiting for Chairman Kim Jong-un's visit to Seoul. However, as opposed to many speculation, his visit hasn't been made yet. What do you think makes him hesitate?
If Chairman Kim Jong-un pays return visit to Seoul, then he should have something to bring back to Pyongyang. Okay, and what he wants is a kind of economic incentives from South Korea, okay, such as resumption of Kaesong Industrial Complex and resumption of Mount Kumgang Choice Project, and also other kinds of economic exchange and cooperation. But our government is fully complying with United Nations Security Council sanction resolutions. Therefore, we cannot, accommodate North Korean demands. If that being the case, then Kim Jong-un has to go back to Pyongyang with empty hand. Okay? Then North Korean citizens will not be happy. Okay? Under that circumstance, it would be very difficult for Chairman Kim Jong-un to visit Seoul, okay, and have another summit in Seoul.
Right. Then when do you think he will come?
I don't know. There are 2 routes. One route is President Trump and Chairman Kim Jong-un have a U.S. DPRK summit first. That will be the second summit. And perhaps President Moon can join the summit and adopt the Endeavour Declaration. And after that, Chairman Kim Jong-un pays visit to Seoul. And that would be the most ideal scenario. But if that doesn't happen, then still Chairman Kim Jong-un can visit to Seoul, and then President Moon Jae-in and Chairman Kim Jong-un can discuss about the concrete denuclearization of North Korea. And then we persuade the President Trump so that President Trump and Chairman Kim Jong-un can have a second summit. And in that second summit, they can talk about relaxation of sanctions against North Korea, as well as very concrete moves toward the denuclearization by North Korea. In either way would work, but we should wait and see what will happen.
If Chairman Kim Jong-un visits Seoul, what kind of impact will it have on inter-Korean relations and also on Pyongyang-Washington relations?
I personally argue that if Chairman Kim Jong-un visits Seoul, it will routinize North South Korean summit. And also the very fact that the North Korean leader visits Seoul for the first time in history. Right. And that will open new horizon of trust between North and South Korea. And also some South Korean peoples in hostility against Kim Jong-un can be somewhat diluted. And also in the process, President Moon Jae-in can persuade Chairman Kim Jong-un to take some concrete measures toward the denuclearization, with which President Moon Jae-in can persuade President Trump to have a second summit with Chairman Kim Jong-un. Therefore, if Chairman Kim Jong-un visits Seoul, then President Moon will have a much more in-depth discussion with Chairman Kim Jong-un on how to deal with American sanction issues. Okay? In that way, and President Moon Jae-in can play a role of mediator, and then persuade President Trump to have a meeting with Kim Jong-un. But in either way, if Chairman Kim Jong-un visits Seoul, that will bring about very positive repercussions.
Chairman Kim uses his annual New Year speech to announce the blueprint of North. What kind of message do you think he will deliver in the next year?
Obviously, I don't know, but obviously one thing is very clear. That is what he will emphasize the importance of economic development. He will emphasize the importance of science and technology. And also he will continue to underscore the importance of cultivation of human capital in North Korea. He will, continue to emphasize the denuclearization. Okay, I really don't think he will change, his, posture on denuclearization. However, he may, become critical of American rigid stance on the, sanction measures on North Korea. But overall, I don't think there will be a big change from his New Year speech of 2018. Therefore, in other words, continuing emphasis on economic development, okay, and then the importance of science and technology. But as the nuclear issue, I do not know what kinds of posture he will show. However, he will adhere to the previous posture of denuclearization. But he may come up with some demands on the United States and South Korea.
세상은 아마 중대한 변화를 보게 될 것입니다. 오늘과 같은 이런 자리를 위해서 노력해 주신 트럼프 대통령께 사회를 주합니다.
I think both sides are going to be very impressed with the result. A lot of goodwill went into this, a lot of work, a lot of preparation. I want to thank everybody on both sides, Secretary Pompeo and all of his counterparts. They were absolutely fantastic. Republicans in Congress passed the biggest, based on the recent statement of North Korea. I've decided to terminate the planned summit in Singapore on June 12th. Actually, we need 10 democratically because we have the ridiculous filibuster.
이철아 동지, 홍구 동지, 김철용 동지, 김일국대를 당중앙위원회에
Now let's focus on Kim-Trump summit in Singapore last June. What was the significance and achievement of this summit?
Most crucial aspect is that two leaders met the first time in history. Right. Okay, the North Korea has been really wanting to have some kind of summit with the United States, perhaps since the end of the Korean War. That never happened. Okay, but President Trump willingly met, Chairman Kim Jong-un in Singapore. That means what? The first encounter of the leaders of the two hostile nations. And I would place a great significance on that event in itself. But at the same time, two leaders were able to reach an agreement, three important aspects of U.S.-DPRK relations. Both leaders have agreed to create a new relationship based on the trust. And both leaders have agreed to pursue stable and lasting peace in Korea. At the same time, by reaffirming the Panmunjom Declaration, both leaders agreed to seek complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. And finally, Singapore Declaration stipulates that North Korea will develop the remains of American soldiers, killed during the Korean War, and send them back to the United States. Those are the four elements of the Singapore Declaration. But all those things, underscores new dimensions of a relationship between Pyongyang and Washington. And more interesting thing was that after the summit, President Trump gave a press conference. He declared that he will be suspending ROK-U.S. joint military exercise, which was scheduled in August. And then he gave three reasons. First, North Korea has shown good behavior for the past 7 months. North Korea did not undertake a nuclear missile provocation. Therefore, North Korea deserves some kind of reward from us. Second, he argued that having joint military exercise and training is too costly. To save the budget, it is better to suspend the joint military exercise and training. Third, he said that North Korea could think ROK-U.S. joint military exercise of being provocative. It is very interesting intersubjective understanding of North Korea by American president. But I would say that those are the very, very interesting rationales by American president of not having a joint military exercise and training. And North Korea could have taken it very, very positive signal.
Right. Although there were some good results, but some argue that there has been little progress related to nuclear negotiation between the North and the United States. Why do you think the reason behind it?
Immediately after the Singapore summit, Secretary of State Pompeo paid a visit to Pyongyang on July 8th and 9th. But his visit was not successful because Secretary Pompeo was calling for declaration and inspection on the part of North Korea. But North Korea just rejected that proposal. And North Korea argues that, look, the U.S. and North Korea are still in hostile relations. And how can we come up with a list of nuclear facilities, materials, and bombs and give it to our hostile partner, United States? Then it is tantamount to giving a hit list to our enemy, the United States. That was one reason. And another reason was that the American intelligence community has come up with an estimate of 60 to 65 nuclear bombs in North Korea. And North Korean argument is this: if we have less than 60 to 65 nuclear bombs, then how can we come up with a so-called declaration? If we give less numbers, the U.S. will be accusing us of cheating the U.S. Therefore, entire negotiation can be derailed. Therefore, we cannot come up with all these kinds of declaration and inspection. Therefore, North Korean position is this: there got to be first, there got to be the adoption of end of war declaration and some form of non-aggression assurance. Then North Korea might consider coming up with declaration and inspection.
I see. One wants sanction relief, while the other one says no before the final denuclearization. What do you think the two should do to come to an agreement?
But in my personal opinion, the North Korean position seems to be much more based on common sense. Okay, the American position is that unless there is a complete denuclearization, there will be no relaxation of sanctions against North Korea. That means what? North Korea, you dismantle first. Then we may consider giving incentives such as a relaxation of sanctions. North Korea would never accept that kinds of proposals. Therefore, I think that we got to really think about it in terms of a simultaneous exchange based on the principle of action for action. Okay? Otherwise, it would be extremely difficult to break the current stalemate.
So does it mean the process of denuclearization and sanction relief should be approached as a linked process?
They should be linked, okay? And if North Korea shows good behavior, then we got to give it some kind of incentive to North Korea so that North Korea can continue to show good behavior, right? But if you ask North Korea that you get rid of nuclear weapons first, then we'll consider relaxing sanctions against you, North Korean leadership will never accept that kind of proposal.
Then how likely is the second Kim-Trump summit in early next year?
I don't know, but President Trump and Secretary Pompeo have been hinting that they would have a summit talk with Chairman Kim Jong-un sometime in January or February. I hope that would happen so that Kim Jong-un can pay a visit to Seoul. In that way, I hope that there would be kind of a resuscitation of a new momentum. Okay, otherwise the stalemate can be protracted. Otherwise, the stalemate can continue.
Recently, President Trump said there's no need to rush to make a deal with Chairman Kim. However, at the same time, he also said that North Korea has the greatest potential economically. What does he mean by that?
Yeah, North Korea has a great potential for the economy. North Korea has an untapped market. If North Korea adopt the opening and reform and then adopt the market system, then North Korea will be another China, another Vietnam. Therefore, economic revitalization of North Korea will be simply matter of truth, okay, and matter of factness. Therefore, it is quite right for President Trump to argue that North Korea would have a very, very promising in the future economic, the prospect, okay. But on the other hand, I'm not going to hurry. I think that could be part of a bargaining tactic on the part of President Trump. Therefore, if United States shows very pressing need to have a dialogue with North Korea, then North Korea can use it as a bargaining leverage. Therefore, to avoid that one, he has been sending signal that okay, ball into your court. Okay, if I wanted to have a talk, come out. If not, I'm going to wait. Another interpretation could be that the president might want to use the North Korean nuclear card for the November 2020, next presidential election. Therefore, time might not be ripe right now. Therefore, he might want to wait up until that time. I don't know the reason, okay? But in my view, it is not a good idea to wait further because time is on nobody's side.
Then what do you think Pyongyang and Washington should do to yield real results after their second summit?
The solution is very simple and straightforward. North Korea got to make much more concrete moves toward the denuclearization to the extent that it involves irreversible staging. But at the same time, the United States should relax sanctions against North Korea, and the United States should create an international milieu under which North Korea can seek opening and reform. Okay? Therefore, there should be concessions, bold concessions from both sides. That is a kind of answer to make a breakthrough to the current stalemate.
Right. Meanwhile, there are concerns regarding speed of the inner Korean reconciliation, and some even argue that the speed of inner Korean reconciliation should be congruent with that of North and the United States relations. What's your view on that?
But that issue has been resolved because, during the Steve Biegun's last visit to Seoul, that issue was raised, and then the U.S. and South Korea have agreed to form a working group, and now there have been 2 rounds of working group meetings. Therefore, I don't see any problem with the coordination between Washington and Seoul. But I have some different view from those who argued in that way. That is what, if we link inter-Korean relations to U.S.-DPRK relations, then if anything wrong, if something goes wrong with the U.S.-DPRK relations, then inter-Korean relations will be also stalled. Then there will be no exit. Therefore, there is a need to decouple inter-Korean relations from the U.S.-DPRK relations. Therefore, even if there is a stalled relations between Pyongyang and Washington, if we have a good consultative mechanism with Pyongyang, then through that mechanism we can find some solution to the stalemate between Pyongyang and Washington. Therefore, I really don't think that the inter-Korean relationship should be linked to or subject to U.S.-DPRK relations.
I see.
한반도에 더 이상 전쟁은 없을 것이며 새로운 평화의 시대가 열리고 있음을 함께 선언하였습니다. 오늘 김정은 위원장과 나는 완전한 비핵화를 통해 핵 없는 한반도를 실현하는 것이 우리의 공동 목표라는 것을 확인했습니다.
Great honor to be with a very good friend of mine.
이제 북한의 핵 포기는 북한 내부에서도 되돌릴 수 없을 만큼 공식화되었습니다.
What do you think has been the main drive behind the dramatic change on the Korean Peninsula in 2018?
North Korea wanted prosperity. South Korea wanted peace. United States wanted some kinds of political achievement. Those dynamic interplay of those three motives led to the great reversal on the Korean Peninsula in year 2018.
I see. How would you assess President Moon Jae-in's role as a driver on the Korean Peninsula in 2018?
I would argue that President Moon Jae-in's patience, prudence, and authenticity played a very, very important role in turning around the crisis on the Korean Peninsula into a new prospect for peace and denuclearization. He really played a very, very important mediating role. No wonder why Time chose him as one of 5 leaders of the world.
Right. It seems like President Moon will continue to play a very important critical role regarding the peace process on the Korean Peninsula. Which direction do you think he should approach his mediator role?
It's very obvious, because what President Moon does want, he wants peace, denuclearization, and common prosperity on the Korean Peninsula. Therefore, he will be continuing to persuade Chairman Kim Jong-un to give up nuclear weapons, okay? And he will continue to persuade President Trump to use the diplomatic method in resolving North Korean nuclear issue. And he will try to appeal to the South Korean people that there got to be unity and national consensus in solving the problem. And also he'll be making outreach to China, Japan, and Russia, and even European Union to work together to resolve peaceful outcome of the North Korean nuclear issue. Therefore, he will continue to pursue the very similar pattern of foreign policy, but with more courage and imagination.
I see. Professor Moon, what are your prospects on the Korean Peninsula in 2019?
It's very difficult to tell, but I personally wish that we would not return to year 2017. And I'm very cautiously optimistic. Reason is very simple, because leaders of North South Korea and the United States have opened the channels of communication. They, President Trump, President Moon Jae-in, Chairman Kim Jong-un, have some sort of so-called trust among themselves, okay? And also there's huge people's anticipation that there should be peace and denuclearization in Korea. Because of these factors, I would say that we would not return to the nightmarish 2017, and perhaps 2019 will be as good as 2018. With that understanding, I take a position of cautious optimism.
Last but not least, could you say something to those who are truly longing for the lasting peace on the Korean Peninsula?
But I would urge them to be patient, prudent, and show unity and consensus. And government cannot pursue in a consistent and flexible policy without people's support. Okay, and when there is people's support and consensus, the government would not politicize in the policies of North Korea. Yeah? Therefore, I think the people's understanding, support, and consensus will be the most important attributes that can make our policy in North Korea be successful.
I see. Professor Moon, thank you very much for sharing your insights with us today, and also thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.